Hyunjin arrives too late to Felix's home, where his mother's heartbreaking words and Bang Chan's silent presence change everything forever. "You're too late." Felix's mother's voice barely rose above a whisper, yet those three words struck Hyunjin harder than any scream ever could. He froze in the doorway. The rain still clung to his black coat, dripping onto the polished wooden floor. His breathing was uneven after running through empty streets with nothing but panic pushing him forward. The familiar scent of warm tea and freshly baked bread, once comforting whenever he visited Felix's home, had disappeared beneath the sharp smell of medicine and candle wax. The entire house was unusually silent, not the peaceful silence of an ordinary evening. It was the silence that came after too many tears had already been shed. Hyunjin's trembling eyes slowly searched the living room until they landed on someone standing near the window, Bang Chan. He stood perfectly still, wearing a plain grey sweater instead of his usual hoodie. His shoulders looked heavier than Hyunjin had ever seen them. His hands were buried deep inside his pockets as if he were trying to hide how violently they were shaking. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The rain tapped softly against the glass while the old grandfather clock continued its relentless ticking. Tick, tick, tick. Every second felt like another accusation. Hyunjin swallowed. "Where is Felix?" Bang Chan didn't answer. Instead, he lowered his head. That silence frightened Hyunjin more than any possible answer. Felix's mother stepped closer. Her eyes were swollen from crying, but her expression remained strangely calm, the kind of calm that only appears after grief has exhausted every last tear. "You promised him," she whispered. Hyunjin looked at her without understanding. You told him you would come before sunset." His heartbeat stopped. The promise. He remembered it with painful clarity. Just yesterday, Felix had laughed while leaning against the garden fence. "Be late tomorrow," Felix had said with a grin. "I finally want to tell you something I've been hiding." Hyunjin had laughed back. "Be there early. I mean it." "I know." Now those memories echoed like broken glass inside his mind. Traffic, endless phone calls, a meeting he couldn't leave, a phone battery that died halfway through the afternoon, excuses. Every single one sounded meaningless now. "I tried," Hyunjin whispered. Felix's mother slowly shook her head. He waited until the sun disappeared. Hyunjin felt every word tearing through him. He kept looking through the window. Another breath. He asked Bang Chan every 5 minutes whether you had called. Bang Chan finally closed his eyes. Hyunjin noticed the dark circles beneath them, proof that he hadn't slept. "I told him you'd come," Bang Chan finally said, his voice cracked. "Believed you would." Hyunjin's knees almost gave way. He wasn't simply late. Someone else had carried the weight of his promise. A sudden gust of wind rattled the windows. The lights flickered. For an instant the room darkened, revealing framed family photographs hanging on the wall. Hyunjin instinctively looked toward them. One picture immediately caught his attention. Felix, Bang Chan, Felix's parents, and himself, all four smiling beneath bright autumn leaves. The memory felt impossibly distant now. Back then, Felix had insisted on taking dozens of pictures because he believed memories faded faster than people admitted. "If we don't photograph today," Felix had laughed, "our future selves might forget we were this happy." Hyunjin suddenly wished they had taken even more. His chest tightened until breathing became painful. "I want to see him." No one answered. Felix's mother simply turned toward the hallway. Her slow footsteps echoed across the wooden floor. Hyunjin followed. Bang Chan remained behind for several seconds before quietly joining them. The hallway seemed longer than Hyunjin remembered. Family portraits lined the walls, birthday celebrations, graduation ceremonies, vacations by the sea. Every picture carried Felix's bright smile. Yet as Hyunjin walked farther, another detail became impossible to ignore. In nearly every photograph from the last 2 years, Bang Chan stood beside Felix, always close, always watching over him. Hyunjin frowned. He had never noticed before, not because Bang Chan was hiding, because Hyunjin had never truly looked. Felix's mother stopped before a white bedroom door. She rested her hand against the handle. "He wanted to tell you the truth today." Hyunjin stared at the door. What truth? She hesitated. For the first time, uncertainty crossed her face. "He said you deserved to hear it from him." Hyunjin's pulse quickened. Behind that door waited not only Felix, but every answer he had unknowingly avoided for months. Bang Chan slowly stepped beside him. "I think," he murmured, "it's finally time you understood why he kept smiling even when everything was falling apart." Hyunjin reached for the doorknob. His fingers trembled so violently that he almost couldn't hold it. Outside, thunder rolled across the dark evening sky. Inside, the silence waited, and for the first time in his life, Hyunjin realized that arriving late could change far more than a single day. Sometimes, it changed an entire lifetime. Hyunjin pushed the bedroom door open with a trembling hand. The familiar scent of lavender drifted through the room, mixed with the faint smell of old books and the cool evening air flowing in through a half-open window. Nothing looked abandoned. Felix's guitar rested in the corner beside a stack of handwritten lyrics. A small lamp cast a warm glow across the neatly made bed, while dozens of photographs were pinned above the desk. It looked as though Felix had simply stepped outside and would return at any moment with his usual bright smile. Instead, the room stood painfully still. Hyunjin took one hesitant step inside. His heartbeat echoed loudly in his ears. Bang Chan remained near the doorway, giving him space, while Felix's mother quietly stayed in the hallway, unable to bring herself to enter. Hyunjin's eyes wandered across the room until they settled on a notebook lying open on the desk. Beside it rested an old wristwatch, his own wristwatch, his breath caught. Months earlier, the strap had broken during a camping trip. Hyunjin had searched everywhere for it before finally giving up. Felix had found it. He had repaired it without saying a word. Hyunjin carefully picked it up. The hands of the watch had stopped forever at 6:17. A small folded note lay beneath it. His fingers shook as he unfolded the paper. The handwriting was unmistakable. It belonged to Felix. "If you're reading this, then you finally came." Hyunjin closed his eyes. Every word became heavier than the last. "Don't blame yourself yet. I know you'll try. You always do." A tear rolled silently down his cheek. Felix's handwriting remained neat despite several places where the ink had blurred, as though he had paused while writing. "There are things I've hidden from everyone, not because I wanted to lie, but because I wanted everyone to keep smiling." Hyunjin continued reading, "Especially you." He lowered the paper for a moment, his vision blurred. Bang Chan quietly walked toward the bookshelf, pretending to organize a few books so Hyunjin could have a moment alone. The silence between them was no longer uncomfortable. It was shared grief. Hyunjin unfolded the second half of the letter. "Do you remember the first winter we met?" A memory instantly surfaced. Felix slipping on icy pavement before bursting into laughter. Hyunjin laughing so hard he nearly fell beside him, neither of them caring how cold the night had become. "That was the day I decided I wanted to protect that smile." Hyunjin bit his lip. His hands trembled harder, but somewhere along the way, Bang Chan started protecting mine. Hyunjin slowly looked toward Bang Chan. Bang Chan had stopped moving. His back remained turned. Neither of them spoke. Felix's words filled the silence instead. "You probably never noticed. That's okay, you were always looking ahead." Chan was always looking back, making sure no one got left behind. Bang Chan quietly lowered his head. A tear escaped despite every attempt to remain composed. Hyunjin suddenly remembered countless forgotten moments. Bang Chan insisting on driving Felix home after late rehearsals. Bang Chan carrying Felix's backpack when he looked tired. Bang Chan silently cancelling his own plans whenever Felix needed someone. At the time, Hyunjin had assumed it was simply kindness. Now every memory carried an entirely different meaning. Hyunjin continued reading. "Neither of you ever realized how much you cared about each other because both of you were too busy worrying about me." A faint laugh escaped Hyunjin through his tears. "That sounds exactly like you," he whispered, always thinking about everyone else first, always placing himself last. The final page was folded separately. Its edges were worn from being opened and closed many times. Felix had clearly struggled before deciding to finish writing it. Hyunjin unfolded it carefully. "There is one more truth." The room seemed colder. Outside, the rain softened into a gentle drizzle. Even the ticking clock downstairs seemed to fade. Hyunjin read the next sentence. "I asked Mom to forgive you before you arrived." His breathing faltered, "because I knew you would blame yourself." Another tear landed on the page. "Please don't. Some meetings happen on time. Some goodbyes don't. Neither changes how much people love each other." Hyunjin covered his mouth as quiet sobs escaped him. For several long moments, no one moved. Then Bang Chan finally spoke. "I wanted to tell you sooner." Hyunjin slowly looked up. Bang Chan's eyes were red, but Felix stopped me. "Why?" "He wanted you to hear his voice first, even if it was only through his words." Hyunjin gently folded the letter against his chest. The ache inside him remained, but it was no longer only guilt. It had become gratitude. Gratitude for every unnoticed act of kindness, every silent sacrifice, every ordinary day that had been far more precious than he had realized. As the evening grew darker, Felix's mother quietly entered the room carrying a small wooden box. She placed it carefully on the desk between Hyunjin and Bang Chan. "I think," she said softly, "it's time both of you saw what Felix spent the last year preparing." Neither of them spoke. Together, they looked down at the worn wooden box, knowing that whatever rested inside had been entrusted to them by the one person who had always believed they would eventually find their way back to each other. Hyunjin stared at the wooden box for several long seconds, before finally reaching toward it. His fingertips hesitated above the worn brass latch. The smooth wood bore tiny scratches, evidence that it had been opened countless times before being carefully closed again. Felix had always treasured little keepsakes, believing that memories deserved a home of their own. Felix's mother nodded gently. "He asked me not to give this to either of you until you were standing here together." Hyunjin glanced at Bang Chan. For the first time that evening, their eyes met without either of them looking away. Bang Chan drew a slow breath. "Open it." With trembling hands, Hyunjin lifted the latch. A soft click broke the silence. Inside lay dozens of neatly arranged envelopes tied together with a pale blue ribbon. Beneath them rested a small digital camera, several faded concert tickets, and a silver bracelet Hyunjin immediately recognized. It had belonged to Felix since they were teenagers. Hyunjin carefully picked up the camera. Its battery was still alive. The screen illuminated the dim room. The first image appeared. Felix laughing so hard that his eyes had disappeared into crescents, while Bang Chan stood behind him pretending to steal his French fries. The date was 3 years earlier. Hyunjin smiled through his tears. He pressed the next button, another photograph, all three of them sitting on the rooftop of their practice building, wrapped in blankets beneath a sky filled with stars. Another, Felix asleep during a long car ride while Bang Chan quietly adjusted a jacket over his shoulders. Another, Hyunjin teaching Felix how to sketch despite claiming he wasn't good at drawing. Every photograph carried something Hyunjin had overlooked. He had always remembered the big moments. Felix had remembered the quiet ones. Bang Chan suddenly laughed under his breath. Remember this. He pointed toward a picture of Felix holding a badly burned birthday cake. You insisted you could bake. Hyunjin let out an embarrassed chuckle. Nearly set the kitchen on fire. Felix's mother smiled for the first time that evening. He ate every bite anyway. Warmth of the memory lingered only briefly before Hyunjin reached for the stack of envelopes. Each one had a name written across the front. Mom, Dad, Bang Chan, Hyunjin. There were others as well, friends, neighbors, teachers. Even the elderly florist Felix greeted every Sunday morning. He had written farewell letters to nearly everyone who had shaped his life. Hyunjin's envelope felt unusually thick. He carefully opened it. Inside were several pages and a folded photograph. The picture showed Hyunjin and Felix standing in the rain beneath a single umbrella. Both were laughing. Neither seemed aware someone had secretly taken the photograph. A note was written on the back. Some people become family without sharing the same blood. Hyunjin swallowed hard before unfolding the letter. Dear Hyunjin, if you're reading this with tears in your eyes, then you ignored my first request. A weak smile appeared. I asked you not to cry. I knew you wouldn't listen. His vision blurred again. You always carry guilt that doesn't belong to you. You apologize even when storms are beyond your control. Hyunjin lowered his head. Felix understood him better than he understood himself. I don't want my last gift to become another burden. Instead, I want you to notice the people still standing beside you. His eyes slowly drifted toward Bang Chan. Bang Chan was reading his own letter several feet away. His shoulders trembled ever so slightly. Hyunjin looked back at the page. Chan is stronger than he believes. You're kinder than you believe. Both of you hide your pain because you think that's what protects everyone else. Another sentence followed beneath it. Maybe it's finally time to protect each other instead. Silence settled over the room once more. Not the heavy silence of grief, something quieter, something gentler. Felix's mother wiped a tear from her cheek. He worried about both of you every day. Bang Chan carefully folded his own letter before speaking. He knew. Hyunjin looked at him. Knew what? Bang Chan hesitated. He knew I was planning to leave the city. Hyunjin blinked. What? Bang Chan nodded slowly. I received a job offer overseas months ago. The words hung heavily in the air. I never accepted it. Because of Felix, Bang Chan gave a faint smile. He asked me to wait. Hyunjin's heart tightened. He said there were still things I needed to finish here. Bang Chan looked around the bedroom one last time. I think this was what he meant. Outside, the rain had finally stopped. Golden rays from the setting sun slipped through the clouds, filling Felix's room with a warm glow that reflected across the photographs pinned to the wall. For a brief moment, it almost felt as though Felix's laughter still lingered there, woven into the light itself. Hyunjin gently placed his letter back inside the wooden box. I was too focused on reaching him, he whispered. I forgot to see everyone who had been walking beside us all along. Bang Chan stepped closer and rested a reassuring hand on Hyunjin's shoulder. Neither of them needed another promise. Some promises had already been broken. Others, they silently understood, could still be kept. Not for the past they could never change, but for the future Felix had hoped they would build together.
The house grew quieter as evening settled over the neighborhood. The last of the visitors had gone home, leaving only the gentle rustle of leaves outside and the occasional creak of old wooden floors. Warm light spilled from the kitchen, where Felix's mother silently prepared tea more out of habit than desire. She had always made 3 cups whenever Hyunjin visited. Tonight, she instinctively reached for the 3rd cup before stopping. Her hand lingered above the cabinet. Then with a bittersweet smile she placed it back. Hyunjin noticed. Without a word he walked into the kitchen. I can help. Felix's mother looked at him for a moment before handing him the kettle. You know, she said softly, Felix always insisted you made terrible tea. A faint laugh escaped Hyunjin. I did, still drank it every time. Silence that followed no longer felt unbearable. It felt familiar. Bang Chan entered a moment later, carrying the wooden box from Felix's room. He placed it carefully on the dining table, treating it with the same respect one might offer a treasured family heirloom. There was something else inside, he said quietly. Hyunjin looked up. Bang Chan removed a small envelope tucked beneath the false bottom of the box. I almost missed it. Envelope bore no name. Across the front, Felix had written only 3 words, opened together. Hyunjin exchanged a glance with Felix's mother. She nodded. Never seen that one before. Bang Chan carefully opened it. Instead of a letter, a folded map slipped onto the table. It was a map of the city. Several places had been circled in blue ink: the park where they first met, the tiny bakery Felix loved, the music studio, the riverside bridge, and near the edge of the city, a quiet hill overlooking the sea. Hyunjin frowned. What's this? Bang Chan unfolded another small piece of paper hidden inside the map. The handwriting made all 3 of them fall silent. If the 3 of you are reading this together, then you've already cried enough. Now go outside. One last adventure. Felix's mother smiled through fresh tears. He always hated seeing people stay indoors after sad news. Hyunjin remembered, whenever someone argued or felt discouraged, Felix would insist on taking a walk, convinced that moving forward, even literally, made heavy emotions easier to carry. Bang Chan traced the final location with his finger, the hill. Hyunjin nodded slowly. That was his favorite place. Drive there began just after sunset. No music played inside the car. The silence wasn't awkward anymore. It was peaceful. Streetlights reflected across rain-soaked roads while the city gradually faded behind them. Familiar buildings gave way to quiet fields, and before long the ocean appeared beside the winding road, its waves shimmering beneath the fading light. When they reached the hill, the wind greeted them with the scent of salt and wild grass. The view stretched endlessly before them. The sea met the horizon in a soft blend of silver and blue. Hyunjin stood at the edge of the overlook. I haven't been here in years. Bang Chan smiled faintly. Felix came here almost every month. Hyunjin turned. He did. Bang Chan nodded. He said it reminded him that even endings look beautiful from far enough away. Felix's mother slowly walked toward an old wooden bench beneath a lone pine tree. Something rested there, a small metal tin. It looked weathered but carefully sealed against the rain. Hyunjin picked it up. Attached to the lid was another note. I knew you'd find this. Inside were folded pieces of colorful paper. Each carried a different date. Some were years old, others had been written only weeks earlier. Hyunjin unfolded the first. Today Hyunjin finally smiled without pretending. He opened another. Chan laughed so hard he almost spilled coffee. Another. Mom looked happier after planting new flowers. Hundreds of tiny memories. Nothing dramatic, nothing extraordinary, just ordinary moments Felix had refused to let disappear. Bang Chan quietly wiped his eyes. He collected happiness. Felix's mother nodded. He always believed people remembered tragedies more easily than joy. Hyunjin looked out across the ocean, clutching one of the colorful notes. The wind lifted his hair as the sun disappeared beneath the horizon, painting the sky with shades of gold, crimson, and violet. I kept thinking I failed him. Bang Chan stepped beside him. You were late. Hyunjin closed his eyes. I know. You weren't absent from his life. Hyunjin looked at him. There's a difference. The first time since arriving at the house, the crushing weight in Hyunjin's chest eased. He realized that love was not measured by a single missed promise. It was measured by countless ordinary days spent laughing, arguing, apologizing, forgiving, and choosing one another again and again. As darkness gently settled over the sea, the three of them remained on the hill in comfortable silence. No one spoke Felix's name. They didn't need to. The wind carried his memory through the swaying grass, the crashing waves, and the quiet warmth that lingered between the people he had loved most. And for the first time since hearing the words, "You're too late," Hyunjin understood that although he had arrived too late for one final conversation, he was not too late to honor everything Felix had left behind. Morning arrived with a pale golden light that filtered through the curtains of Felix's family home. For the first time in days, the house did not feel consumed by grief alone. The silence remained, but it had softened. Hyunjin woke on the living room couch, still wrapped in the blanket Felix's mother had quietly placed over him during the night. For a few moments he forgot everything. Then his eyes landed on the wooden box resting on the coffee table, and reality returned with gentle, unavoidable weight. He sat up slowly. The house smelled of freshly brewed coffee and toasted bread. From the kitchen came the faint sound of humming. Felix's mother, she had always hummed while cooking. Hyunjin remembered teasing Felix about it years ago. Your mom sings the same melody every morning. Felix had smiled proudly. That's how I know everything's okay. Melody sounded fragile today, yet it was still there. Life somehow was continuing. Bang Chan entered from the backyard carrying a small cardboard box filled with gardening tools. His sneakers were stained with damp soil and a few leaves clung to his sleeves. Hyunjin looked at him curiously. What are you doing? Bang Chan set the box down. I promised Felix I'd help him finish something. Hyunjin frowned. Promise. Without answering immediately, Bang Chan walked toward the back door. Hyunjin followed. The garden behind the house glistened with droplets left by last night's rain. Flowers swayed gently in the morning breeze and birds hopped across the stone pathway. Near the wooden fence stood a small patch of freshly turned earth. Beside it rested several unopened pots containing young sunflower plants. Hyunjin stopped. Sunflowers, Bang Chan nodded. He loved them. Felix's mother joined them, wiping her hands on a kitchen towel. He said they always looked toward the light. Her voice carried a quiet smile. He wanted the garden filled with them before summer. Hyunjin knelt beside the flower pots. One pot had a tiny handwritten label attached to it for difficult days, another for forgiven mistakes, another for people who stay. Hyunjin swallowed hard. Even while planting these flowers, Felix had been thinking about others. Bang Chan picked up a small shovel and handed one to Hyunjin. Help me. Without another word, the two of them began planting. The work was slow. Neither man spoke much. The only sounds were birdsong, rustling leaves, and the gentle scrape of soil. As Hyunjin pressed the first sunflower into the earth, he remembered another afternoon years ago. Felix had insisted on rescuing a dying plant from a roadside market. It just needs someone to believe it'll bloom again. Hyunjin had laughed. It's a flower. Felix had shaken his head. So are people. Memory lingered as Hyunjin carefully covered the roots with soil. Perhaps Felix had been right. Some hearts only needed patience. An hour later, the final sunflower stood proudly beside the others. The once empty garden now shimmered with quiet promise. Felix's mother looked at the row of young plants, tears gathering in her eyes. He would have loved this. Bang Chan smiled softly. I think he already does. Hyunjin brushed the dirt from his hands. His gaze wandered toward the old wooden shed at the corner of the yard. The door stood slightly open. Never been inside. Felix's mother followed his eyes. He spent a lot of time there this past year. Bang Chan looked surprised. He never showed it to me either. Together they walked toward the shed. Its hinges creaked softly as Hyunjin pushed the door wider. Sunlight streamed through dusty windows. Shelves lined the walls. Model airplanes, paintbrushes, stacks of sketchbooks, an old record player. Every shelf revealed another hidden passion Felix had quietly nurtured. Hyunjin picked up one of the sketchbooks. Inside were dozens of detailed pencil drawings, family dinners, concert rehearsals, the seaside hill, Bang Chan reading a book. Hyunjin asleep in the car during a road trip. None of the people in the sketches seemed aware they were being watched. Felix had captured ordinary moments with extraordinary tenderness. Near the final pages, Hyunjin stopped. There was one unfinished drawing. It showed 3 figures standing beneath blooming sunflowers. The outlines were complete. Only the faces remained blank. Tucked inside the page was a small note. I couldn't decide what expressions to draw. Maybe that's because your story isn't finished yet. Hyunjin closed the sketchbook against his chest. Outside, a breeze swept through the garden, making the newly planted sunflowers sway together as if greeting the morning. Felix's mother stepped into the doorway of the shed. "You know," she said quietly, "he always believed people leave pieces of themselves in the lives they touch." Hyunjin looked around the room once more, the sketches, the letters, the photographs, the garden, the memories. Felix had not tried to leave behind grand achievements. He had simply left behind kindness. And perhaps that was the rarest legacy of all. Hyunjin smiled for the first time without forcing it. It was small, fragile, but genuine. When Bang Chan noticed, he smiled too. No words were needed. In the quiet warmth of that ordinary morning, both of them finally understood what Felix had spent his final months trying to teach them. Grief never truly disappears, but neither does love. One learns to live beside the other, allowing every sunrise to carry both sorrow and hope in the same gentle light. A week passed and the rhythm of the house slowly began to change. The curtains were opened every morning. The dining table no longer remained untouched. The sound of footsteps returned to the hallway. Grief had not disappeared. It had simply learned to breathe alongside ordinary life. Hyunjin found himself visiting every afternoon after work. At first he came because he felt responsible. Now he came because it felt like home. Felix's mother greeted him with the same gentle smile each day, always insisting he stay for dinner. She never asked him to replace the son she had lost. Instead, she welcomed him exactly as Felix always had, as family. One quiet afternoon, while helping organize the bookshelves in the living room, Hyunjin noticed an old envelope tucked between 2 novels. Its edges had yellowed with age. Across the front, in Felix's familiar handwriting, were the words, "Open only when you're ready to forgive yourself." Hyunjin stared at the envelope without moving. Bang Chan, who was dusting a nearby shelf, noticed the expression on his face. "What is it?" Hyunjin silently handed him the envelope. Bang Chan read the words and gave a faint smile. "He really knew you." Hyunjin nodded. "I don't know if I'm ready. You may never feel ready." Hyunjin looked down at the letter again. Perhaps Felix had known that too. With a slow breath, he carefully unfolded the paper. The first sentence immediately brought tears to his eyes. "Dear Hyunjin, if you're finally reading this, then maybe you've stopped punishing yourself every morning." His chest tight. "If not, keep reading anyway." A quiet laugh escaped him through his tears. That sounded exactly like Felix. "You always believed one mistake could erase 1,000 beautiful memories. It can't, not for me." Hyunjin lowered his head. His fingers trembled against the page. "I never measured our friendship by one mispromise. I measured it by every day you stood beside me." Before that, images flooded his mind. Late-night conversations on rooftops, long walks through the city after rehearsals, birthdays, arguments that ended in laughter, road trips filled with terrible singing. Years of ordinary happiness, none of it had disappeared. Felix continued, "Please don't let my last day become bigger than every day we shared before it." Hyunjin quietly wiped away another tear. Bang Chan remained beside him, saying nothing. Sometimes silence offered greater comfort than words. Near the bottom of the letter, Felix had added one final request. "Do something for me. Keep laughing, not because you forgot me, but because I never wanted my memory to become the reason you stopped living." Hyunjin folded the letter carefully. For the first time since that painful evening, he felt something inside him finally loosen. The guilt that had wrapped around his heart was still there, but it no longer controlled every breath. Felix had already forgiven him. Perhaps it was time to begin forgiving himself. At evening, Hyunjin and Bang Chan decided to take a walk through the neighborhood. The streets were calm, washed clean by the rain that had fallen earlier in the day. Children chased one another through a small park, their laughter echoing beneath the trees. An elderly couple walked hand in hand. Life continued all around them. Bang Chan slipped his hands into his pockets. "I avoided this neighborhood after everything happened." Hyunjin glanced at him, thought every corner would remind me of him. Bang Chan smiled gently. "They do." He paused. "But now, the memories don't only hurt." Hyunjin understood there was sadness, but there was warmth too. As they passed a familiar bakery, the owner stepped outside carrying a paper bag. "Been waiting for you too." Bang Chan looked surprised. "Us?" The elderly baker nodded. "Felix came here every Friday." He handed Hyunjin the bag. "He paid in advance." Hyunjin blinked. "What?" The baker smiled with watery eyes. "He said one day the two of you would come looking exhausted." He chuckled softly. "He told me to give you your favorite pastries and refused to accept payment." Hyunjin looked inside the bag. 2 chocolate pastries, 1 cinnamon roll, exactly what the 3 of them used to order. For a long moment, neither Hyunjin nor Bang Chan spoke. Then almost at the same time they laughed. It was quiet, soft, a little broken but real. The baker smiled. There it is. What? That laugh. He looked toward the evening sky. Felix always said the world sounded a little brighter whenever you laughed together. Hyunjin held the warm paper bag against his chest. As he and Bang Chan continued walking beneath the fading sunlight, he realized something that had taken him far too long to understand. Love did not end with goodbye. It remained hidden in letters waiting to be opened. Flowers beginning to bloom, familiar songs humming through quiet kitchens, and warm pastries someone had paid for long before they were needed. Felix was no longer walking beside them. Yet somehow through every act of kindness he had left behind, he was still gently showing them the way forward. The first day of summer arrived beneath a sky so clear that it almost seemed unreal. The garden behind Felix's house had transformed. The rows of sunflowers they had planted months earlier now stood tall, their golden faces turned toward the morning light exactly as Felix had imagined. A gentle breeze carried their earthy fragrance through the yard and bees drifted lazily from blossom to blossom. Hyunjin stood quietly among them. He reached out and brushed his fingertips across one bright yellow petal. They bloomed, he whispered. They did. Bang Chan's voice came from behind him. He walked over carrying 2 cups of coffee, handing one to Hyunjin before looking across the sea of flowers. I think he'd complain they weren't tall enough. Hyunjin laughed. No, Bang Chan smiled. Right, say we planted them too close together. Both of them laughed, and this time the laughter came easily. It no longer felt like something borrowed from happier days. It belonged to the present. Felix's mother stepped into the garden carrying a small framed photograph. It was the same picture Hyunjin had noticed on the first heartbreaking night. The 4 of them standing beneath autumn leaves, smiling without knowing how precious that ordinary afternoon would become. She placed the photograph beneath the largest sunflower. I thought this belonged here. Hyunjin nodded. So do I. The 3 of them remained together in peaceful silence. No tears fell, not because they no longer missed Felix, but because missing him had become another way of loving him. After a while, Hyunjin took a slow breath. I spent so long believing I was too late. Felix's mother gently shook her head. You were late for one moment. She looked into his eyes with quiet certainty. But you were there for years before it. Bang Chan rested a reassuring hand on Hyunjin's shoulder. And you'll be here for many years after. Hyunjin looked around the garden. The letters had all been read. The photographs had been placed into albums. The unfinished sketch had been framed inside the house. The music in Felix's room played again every Sunday morning. Nothing could bring Felix back, but everything he had loved was still alive. The flowers, the memories, the kindness he had quietly planted in the hearts of the people around him. Hyunjin finally understood what Felix had tried to teach them all along. Life was never measured by how long someone stayed. It was measured by how deeply they changed the people they loved. As the sun climbed higher into the blue sky, a warm wind swept through the garden, making every sunflower sway together as though they were greeting an old friend. Hyunjin closed his eyes for a moment, in the rustling leaves, in the gentle laughter beside him, and in the warmth of the morning sunlight he could almost imagine hearing Felix's familiar voice, not calling anyone back, not asking anyone to hold on to the past, only encouraging them to keep walking forward. When Hyunjin opened his eyes again, he smiled. It was no longer a smile weighed down by regret. It was a smile filled with gratitude. Together Bang Chan and Felix's mother walked back toward the house, leaving the blooming garden behind them, not as a place of farewell, but as a reminder that love, when freely given, never truly disappears. It grows quietly in the lives it touches, blooming again and again in unexpected seasons. And somewhere beyond the reach of sorrow, in every memory filled with laughter and every act of kindness shared with another, Felix's light continued to shine. The end.